All right, all my good people of the North. I don't know why I keep saying that. I don't even know if you're from the North. Anyway, this video is talking about improvising. It was brought up in the comments of the video where I said, hey, I'm going to be running my D&D game. I'm going to be recording my upcoming D&D session. What are some things that you might like to see, right? And one of the questions that came up, and this is a question that's come up many times for me in the past, is people have asked me, how often do you have to improvise? How often do you have to make things up? How often do you have a list of things, notes, and so on, but the stuff that you have to offer to your players at the table is not on your notes, right? You got to make shit up, basically. And I think more importantly, not just how often, when that happens, how do I weave through it? So here's a few thoughts, tips, tricks, whatever. Let's go over three things. First, acceptance. Accept that it's going to happen, right? You can come to the table with all of the greatest content in the world about the lands west of the castle. Wherever you're looking, right? You've got just a folder of stuff. You're ready to go. This session is filled to the brim with goodness. You thought about it all ahead of time, right? Kind of the point of the video, right? Unplanned. How do you handle the moments where you're not prepared for it? So you come to the table with all of this stuff to the west, and your PCs want to leave the castle and go east. But you got nothing. You don't have any notes. You have no names. You don't know what they're going to fight. You know nothing about what's going on in the east. You got to come up with stuff. Accept that it's going to happen. It will happen. Now, the assumption, of course, must be made that, number one, you're most likely running your own story. Now, it can be in a pre-published world. It can be in Eberron, Wildemount, Ravnica, whatever it may be. But it's generally your story. Maybe it's your own entire world, your own campaign setting. But also, you've given your players the freedom to change the story, right? If it's Curse of Strahd, Out of the Abyss, Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Storm King's Thunder, something like this, you're kind of going by the book. If your PCs want to do something totally different, you're like, hey, we're playing by the book, guys. Follow the rules, right? So this is assuming that you're sort of doing your own thing and you're giving your players the freedom to change the story at their whim, because you just don't know ahead of time what they're thinking, what they're going to do. Okay? So here's the tips and tricks of how to weave through that. First off, like I said, accept it. It's going to happen. Once you accept it, you can better, I'm hesitant to say prepare for it, because you don't really prepare for the things that you're not prepared for. Anyway, stay with me, okay? You know what? That's a good time to transition. Show you a different angle of the wonders of this room. I changed it around, so that's why I've been a little bit in the dark lately. I did record my session. I did learn very quickly that I do not, and I'm not Critical Role. I don't pretend to be. But I lose focus on the table and what's going on in the session when I'm paying attention to, is this thing on? So on and so forth. So I did learn of my last session that I don't ever want to record my sessions. But I do have some footage. I'll upload it. It was unwieldy, so I didn't get all 6 hours of my session, but hopefully you'll be able to get some value out of that. I'll upload that later. But anyway, I changed my office around. I'll maybe give you a little zoom through of what I changed. So the computer was down for like 2-3 days as I was moving things around. Anyway, where was I? Acceptance. Accept that it's going to happen. Here's some little things that you can do to prepare. First, make a list of names. Male, female. Look in the back of Xanathar's Guide or something like this. I think in the back of there, it has all these names based on like cultures and various ethnicities. Use Google. And just put them 20 male, 20 female, 1 through 20. That way, when your PCs go off the path and they want to talk to that NPC that's just a throwaway, you just simply described that there was a lot of people outside of the tavern, indicating that this place is a bustling city. You didn't intend for your PCs to talk to all those people, right? So you have a list of names that you can roll a d20 on. The other thing I would make is a small list, like 6 things, so a d6 list of sort of like disposition or attitude of NPCs. If they roll a 1, if you roll a 1, the NPC they are interacting with, maybe the monster that they're interacting with is immediately hostile. They're aggressive, they just want to fight, roll initiative. If they roll a 2, maybe they're helpful. They offer something to the PCs. If they roll a 3, maybe that NPC is stoic and silent. Says nothing, has nothing to offer. That's kind of the clue for your PCs to move on, right? If they roll a 4, it does this. You get it, right? that little NPC disposition chart. That way, when your PCs are supposed to be going to the ruined temple, supposed to be returning the artifact, the religious artifact to the high priest of that temple, they're supposed to do this. And the paladin's like, there's a guy over there and he looks cool. Let me go talk to him. Let's see what he's about. And you're kind of thinking, looking through your notes, he's not about anything. You like that transition? He's not about anything. Your notes don't say anything about him. But you've got a little bit. Okay, his name is blah. And he's afraid of something. That's the other thing on your little disposition list. He looks spooked. That might be... See, what you're looking for are little launch points for your creativity. Little nuggets during the unprepared moments where you have to just wing it, that you can look at and just launch off of it and say, oh, hold on, okay. He's looking around up to the rooftops, and the player's going to look up to the rooftops and, hey, sir, what's going on? What's up there? But you have little anchors that you can anchor to, okay? So you have a name list, 20 male, 20 female, 1 through 20. You have a 1d6 list of sort of how the general attitude of the NPC in question, right? And then the last thing I would do is I would make like a little encounter. One single thing, right? Now here's the thing. Go through some checkpoints for the encounter, but don't actually make it specific to one monster. Keep it free. So that way, these little checkpoints for this little on-the-fly, off-the-cuff encounter applies to a young dragon, it applies to a group of bandits, or it applies to a tribe of goblins, it applies to a minotaur. Yes, I know that sounds very random encounter, roll on that list. But the random encounter list doesn't give you this little list of bullet points that I'm going to put on screen. And those bullet points that you want to put down in your little, this is your little subsection of your notes that says, here's for the times where my PCs don't follow the path, they're way off the rails, and I got to make shit up. In this little encounter list, write down, what's the trigger for the fight? When does this fight happen? Under a full moon. When the PCs are in the grasslands. It doesn't matter if it's a ranger wandering through the grasslands, doing survival checks, trying to forage for food. It doesn't matter if the PCs have an actual storyline, a mission that says, investigate the abandoned hut that's sitting in the middle of the grasslands for an undead presence. But something is going to happen. Your PCs are going to go off the path. They're not going to follow your notes. And the warlock is going to be like, squirrel. And he's going to go off and boom, trigger the grasslands. So the bullet that you want to focus on for your little encounter is what triggers the fight? Where is the fight going to take place? A second bullet point that you might want to focus on is what's the victory condition? Notice, we're not attaching it to a specific monster. So that way it applies no matter what monster you pull out of the book. Whatever sort of fits in your headspace right now. If you're thinking horror, screaming, whatever, maybe it's a scarecrow, maybe it's some boogeyman, maybe it is something undead. If it's something more chittering, and insect, ankeg, burrowing under the ground, kind of like that big scorpion thing that came out in Transformers, maybe it's ankegs, maybe it's a Umber Hulk, I don't know. Maybe it's a wizard floating in, whatever it may be, right? But where is the fight going to take place? So the trigger, when does it happen? What makes it pop up? What's the victory condition? Can the PCs consider it accomplished or obstacle completed if they run away and just get away from this thing? Do they need to kill it? Here's another big question to ask. What happens if the PCs lose? If the PCs win, that's another bullet point. What do they get for it? Do they get information? Do they just get some EXP and some loot? Is it prophesizing something like there's probably more of these coming? Or maybe you're just trying to give a hint to the players of you're not going to be getting a long rest tonight. These things are probably everywhere, right? What's the point of the fight? Okay? And again, keep it monster free, not specific to any one thing. That way, when you're creating some little nuggets that you can lean into for the unprepared moments, you need to not make them specific, because all you're doing now is you're making too much, you're planning too much, and the whole point is you need to come up with some little sparks that light the fire for you during the unplanned moments. So creating a little sheet with names NPC disposition, sort of how do they react to you and what's the reason why? Are they hospitable? Are they helpful? Are they angry? Are they silent? And a little single encounter that talks about where might this encounter take place, what are the victory conditions, what happens if the PCs win, what do they get from it, and what happens if the PCs lose. That's all you need, okay? There's your little subsection on your notes of like, here's for the moments where my PCs think they got me. Now, here's the good stuff. That being said, here's sort of point number 2. This is a big one. Big one. Acknowledge, just simply bring it up. Tell your PCs, you guys threw me for a loop. You threw a couple of curveballs and I struck out on all of them. I'm not ready. Let's take a break. 10 minutes. Get some food, use the restroom, take your smoke break. I'm not ready. Don't disguise it. Don't be afraid to admit you were caught unawares. You were caught in the surprise round. You're not ready for this. What they just said they want to do, where they want to go, is not in your notes. Tell them that. Be upfront. Because what it does also is it gives the players confidence to be like, hey, the DM's willing to try and come up with something, but he's given us the freedom to come up with what we want. Right? It gives them some sense of control. They don't feel like they're being railroaded because you clearly have no content here. You have to respond to them now. They're in charge. And there's a lot of power in that, but you need to acknowledge that. And whatever questions they come up with that you had no content for, tell them take a break and jot down those questions. Start writing down some names. Go to your office, go to your room, open up your storage bin, pull out some more terrain. Start drawing some stuff on your little tan Chessex mat. Grab some new miniatures. Miniatures. Right? Grab some new stuff so you're ready to go. And then when break is over, boom. Now, at the extreme, maybe you're really caught off guard. Really surprised. End the session. Guys, we're going to call it tonight. We're just going to call it. I got nothing for you, but I don't want to just railroad you. I don't want to say, no, you can't go that way. You're supposed to go through the door. Remember, like you're supposed to explore the dungeon. That's where you know my headspace has been. That's what we've been talking about. Why change your mind now? No, you don't have to do that. Give them the freedom. Just say, I kind of like where you guys are going. I didn't think you were going to go back to the city to recruit help. And maybe even hire someone to scavenge the dungeon for you. I didn't think through that. But as a DM, you need to have the confidence in your ability to run with that and confidence in your group to allow that to happen. But just call it. I'll plan for what you now want to do for next session. Now, if you just sat down at the table, Avengers, assemble. So what was I going to say? If you just assembled, maybe say, guys, let's just play some board games, dudes. Hold on. Aha. Wait, does it glow? There. Let's just sit down and play some board games. Let's shoot the shit. Just talk about the session. Maybe let's start talking about what we might want to play next campaign, whatever. Let's just hang out. But as far as D&D goes, you see, there is so much value in stopping. I feel like one of the enemies, and I'm going to make a video on this. I just thought of that. I need to type it out. You're forcing content. You're forcing the session. You're forcing the game. And you're losing all of the wonder, right? You're trying to polish everything that you have in front of you. And you're not allowing the interaction. You don't DM by yourself. You're not talking to your damn self in a mirror and you're making your own decisions. You need to bounce off of their input. So there's so much power in you having the confidence to say, hey, I'm going to call it. We're still going to have fun. We're going to hang out. But next session, I'm going to come to the table with your stuff. Okay? So don't disguise it. Don't hide it. If you need to stop, stop. And the third and final point, whatever content they missed, you have a whole folder of what happens in west of the castle, the lands in the west. There's a whole folder. You got some new miniatures you ordered, and you freaking painted them. You spent all weekend building some terrain out of foam. And you never got to open that damn storage bin and put it on the table because your PCs decided, we don't want to open the door. Save it. You'll use it again. Store it away. Stash it away for later. You will use it again. When? How? Well, there's one little sticky point that I'm going to mention real quick. I just spent the whole 15 minutes of this video telling you, allow them the control. Give them the freedom. You figure out what to come up with. You come up with some new stuff. And now what I'm going to tell you is going to fly in the face of that. Know when you need to grab the damn train, which has been off the tracks forever. It's been driving through the freaking desert. Know when you need to grab the train, pick it up, slam it onto the tracks, and weld that baby onto the tracks to where it's on the tracks, it's not moving, you can't get off the tracks. Know when you need to do that. How do you know? What are the tips and tricks for that? That might be its own video, but I think for the most part, it's simply telling you just with experience, right? It's still your time, your energy, your prep as a dungeon master that you put in the weeks leading up to the session that, you know, you need to know when to say no to your players. I'm real big on being a yes, 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 but at some point you need to know. Like, guys, we're going to get to this. This is the good stuff I came up with and I put the time and energy into. We're going to do this. Now, here's the cool part. If you've stowed away the content that they didn't get to 6 months ago, real time, they never saw the terrain because you never put it on the damn table. They never saw the miniatures you had ready to go, right? They don't have any of that stuff. They have no concept that you already built this a while ago. This was planned months ago. But now you throw it on the table and you sort of grab the train, slam it onto the tracks and weld it. You force them into that content. Repurpose it. The ancient ruins that they were supposed to go into to investigate some orc shaman that's dealing in necromancy is now the ancient elven ruins where they're searching for the bow that one of the players in your party wants. But it's the same damn terrain. You're just renaming things, relabeling stuff. So stow that stuff away. So to recap real quick, and I'll end the video. The first one is have a little like subsection in your notes, a little cheat sheet of names, NPC dispositions, and one single encounter that's monster creature free, but that talks through a few little bullet points of where does the fight take place, what's the victory condition, what happens, what do the PCs get if they win, and what happens if they lose. And then you can attach that to whatever monster you can, and that just creates a more elaborate form of random encounter. The second big point is acknowledge when you're not ready. When you were caught unaware, tell your PCs that and take a break and get ready. If you don't have enough time, end the session and tell them you'll get it ready for next one. And then the final one is don't toss that stuff aside. Don't flip the table, say, I'm done, I'm never going to DM again, you guys suck. Don't throw it away. Repurpose it, save it, use it later. So the answer, 18 minutes later, how often do I have to improvise? All the time. Those are little things that I will do. I think the biggest one is number 2. Acknowledge to your PCs. I tell my group, give me a little bit. I'm really good, and that is where we get into the building better skills as a human, as a person, right? That's where we get into those good parts, right? That's where we get into the parts about build a better visual library. Build a database that you store in the back of your mind of descriptions. Read content outside of the genre. Just invest yourself in the hobby, in the world, in storytelling, in how to become a better storyteller and how to speak better, and so on. Do all of these things and you'll have more to pull from when you got to come up with stuff on the fly. So very rarely do I have to end the session. Give me a good 10-minute break and I'll come up with some new content. Like I said, more videos to come. I will upload, I don't know if it's going to be next video, but I'll upload my session and edit through that. And hopefully this video kind of answers those big questions, but you'll get to see what the notes were and how I maybe deviated, or I'll talk through it a little bit. So you guys are all awesome. See you later.